Can you recognize the signs that you're being gaslit? We talk a lot about gaslighting, but do we spend the kind of time that we need to actually talking about sharing exactly what gaslighting looks like, how to recognize it, how to protect ourselves better from gaslighting? I don't know why it came to me, why it was a surprise to me to realize that outright lying is a form of gaslighting. I don't, somehow I didn't kind of put two and two together that probably the most common form of gaslighting is deception. And how often does that get practiced? I have a feeling a lot of us have experienced somebody in our life who's lied to us a time or two. So today I'd like to talk about different types of gaslighting, how to recognize it, maybe talk about why. Maybe you might have an issue with wondering what makes it gaslighting, what is actually gaslighting, and then what do we do when we discover that we're being gaslit lit by somebody who's important to us, somebody who's close to us, a loved one, or a family member? How do we handle that? So I'm so excited to have you here on this live today. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr McAvoy. I am a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. And these days I primarily do a lot of education around dysfunctional and healthy relationships and what makes us us, and how can we better protect ourselves? How can we have better relationships with people so that we are safer? That to me is a really big issue. So I love that you're here today. I love to take your questions. Make sure to put your thumbs up in the comments so that I know that you're addressing me. Hey, Megan, so good to see you today. I'm glad that you're here. I thank you so much. Oh, you love my hair today. I got a new wig. It's an Ava Gabor. I love it too. It's really pretty. And I got a blonde to go with it. So I got this kind of this soft red and a blonde. So I'm pretty excited about that. But so gaslighting. So let's talk about gaslighting. What do you know about gaslighting? What can you tell me about it? Let's throw out some quick definitions. Of those who are here, I know that it takes a lot to type something, but I would love to know what you think gaslighting is. And then a second question I have for you is, do you think that you are being gaslit? Do you think you can recognize the signs of being gaslit? So Texas Rose says it's ignoring someone. That's an interesting definition. Can you say more about what you mean by that? I'd love to hear what you're saying. Mariel says someone who makes you question your judgment. I love that. Yeah, it's a great way to twist things around. Scrap Along says somebody who's pushing your buttons. So somebody's a hot button. These are really interesting definitions. A denial of our reality, says Katie. Yeah, that's a good one, Katie. So let me trying to get somebody to believe something that's not true. That's what Sammy says, invalidating your reality. So let me tell you what I see as gaslighting. Gaslighting, in fact, I actually asked Chat GPT, what is gaslighting? I'm trying to, did I type down I bet it gave me an answer and I didn't type its definition. I'm going to try to get that definition for you, but it gave me a whole list of stuff that it was really, really good. Isn't that amazing how we can do that these days? Just type in a question and then we get all this rich content back out of it. It's amazing. You know what? I didn't copy it and I'm not going to take the time to look for it. Gaslighting is I understand it is a diversion tactic to move somebody off of the issue that's being brought up to the issue that has to do with you. So a common example I've used lots of times, if you've listened to me, is if you said to your family member, maybe to your partner or somebody, hey, I thought we agreed that you're going to take the garbage out, and today is Tuesday and the garbage collection happened and the garbage is still sitting in the garage. A good example of gaslighting could be to lie about it. I didn't know we had that discussion. Make you question your reality, make you question your memory. It could be they change the subject and just talk about something else. Hey, did you see whatever else happened outside? Or hey, some big thing that happened in the news or whatever. They could have attacked you. They could say, you know what? You gripe about me about the garbage all the time, and yet you leave the dishes in the sink. So what they do is they take the topic and they don't address the topic and they divert it, and then they attack you for bringing the issue up. So you become the topic, not the topic. And it leads us to question ourselves. It leads us to question our sense of reality, to question our memory, our feelings. We're often sometimes made to feel like we're too much or we're too small. So we end up starting to feel like we're asking for too much or we're saying it wrong. It puts us in a box of making us feel like we have to be smaller and smaller, that we can't be authentically ourselves. And then it also just completely disrupts the conversation so that there is no conversation because you become the target of the conversation. You may have heard of the acronym called DARVO. It stands for, I'm realizing, sorry, that poor YouTube is seeing half of my face is actually, it's nothing like trying to have three tablets going at the same time. It's really, really tricky. You may have heard of DARVO. DARVO is when we deny. So it's when you bring up a topic and the person denies that's a topic, that's a problem. They attack you for bringing it up, and then they make themselves out to be the victim, that you're bad for bringing the issue up. They reverse the position and say that they're the victim because you brought this topic up, that's an attack on them. And so that's one strategy of gaslighting, but it's not the only strategy. Like I said, the most commonplace form of gaslighting that most of us have experienced at one time or another is lying. Somebody just says, that's not how it happened, or it didn't happen, or you got it wrong, or just to tell you something completely, esoteric. That's a great way for doing that. Oh, Philip says a great acronym he uses is AAIFA. Articulating abuse induces further abuse. It's interesting. I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot of you are commenting that this is something very, very identifiable. And the reason is because narcissistic abuse always includes gaslighting. Always. You're going to experience gaslighting if you're in a narcissistically abusive relationship. But it's not the only type of relationship that gaslight. Gaslighting also happens in healthy relationships, and it happens in just normal dysfunctioning relationship or other forms of abusive relationships, not just in narcissistically abusive relationships. Jay is asking me, can I repeat what DARVO stands for? Sure. DARVO literally stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. But let me explain what it means, because that last three acronyms actually is one action. So when you bring up an issue, let's use the garbage example again, that you call your partner out for mistaking the garbage out. They would say, I didn't forget, you never told me. See, there's the denial. Then the attack. The attack was, you never told me. In other words, this is your fault. There's the attack. And then to say, I don't know why you have to always be on me about stuff like this when you're no better at it than I am. See, there's the reverse, where they reverse the victim. Which is weird, because if you bring an issue up, you're not necessarily saying I'm a victim, I have an issue, I'm a victim. But what they do is they reverse the position and say you bringing it up makes them the victim. You've now offended them, you've hurt them, and you're victimizing them for bringing the issue up. So thank you so much for the gift. So that's the way that they shift it. Yeah, and so somebody said something about abuse. Here it is. Tamika asked, what types of people attract narcissistic people? I know there's a lot of conversations on these platforms about that. There's a lot. By the way, I'm a psychologist. I've made it my life practice to work with people. I've had education specifically in personality disorders. I've also counseled personality disorders, and then I've now since then have done a lot of continuing education on the topic of personality disorders. So, am I the end all wisdom on personality disorders and narcissists? Absolutely not. I feel like what I know would probably fill a thimble of what there is to know, but I know that I know more than a lot of people that you're seeing on most of these platforms. I'm not talking about people like Dr. Ramani or Sam Bankman. I think those are or Dr. Les Carter, which I, by the way, interviewed for my podcast, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. There's a lot of very smart people who know a lot about narcissism. Those people are very credible people to listen to. But this type of question comes up a lot, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. So let's dive into what the research says about what type of people attract narcissistic people. Sandra L. Brown in 2014 did a massive study of 600 couples out of Purdue University that asked exactly that question. I got to hear her talk on this extensively in a long continuing education piece of 6-hour educational class on this. She described her research study, her design, her questions, and what she discovered and what it meant about us who get into relationships with people. What she said was that she thought, because based on 40 years of domestic violence information, that the typical victim was somebody who came from a troubled home, who had a traumatic past, and who was making poor decisions about their partner. That was coming out of all this domestic violence case studies, actually anecdotal studies. When she digged into the assumptions that being made, she didn't find research. This was just coming out of case studies. So she then asked the basic question, what is that true? And she took extensive histories. She gave them an ACE test, which is an assessment of childhood trauma. And she also then gave them several personality inventories. What she found, I think, is revolutionary. She found that 66% did not come from a troubled home, did not have a bad childhood, and did not have a history of trauma. So 2/3 were not troubled people who got into a toxic relationship. And then 1/3 came from that type of a home or situation. So 2/3 did not. But interestingly enough, the 2/3 who were attracting narcissists did have two things similar across the board. And those things similar are that they were highly agreeable when they took those personality inventories. And those are things like, these are hardwired into your personality. These are not changeable characteristics. It's like trying to tell an introvert person to become an extrovert. You're not going to change that. But so these are hardwired. If you're a cooperative, agreeable person, you're a person who likes to get along with others. You tend to assume the goodness of people. You believe change is possible. All these types of things that you tend to do, that victims tend to be highly agreeable. And the other thing is they tend to be highly conscientious. Conscientiousness is a measure of you sort of being a moral abiding person. It doesn't have to be any particular religion. It just is a person of high standards, that you have ethics for your life, that you believe there are rules to the world, and you try to follow those rules to the best that you can make sense. The problem is these two qualities make you highly susceptible to suggestions, to missing the cues that you've met at a predatory person. It makes you vulnerable to gaslighting. It extremely increases your vulnerability to gaslighting, makes you more susceptible to cognitive dissonance, because you're long suffering. You're everything that would make you an ideal job candidate. If you were going to apply for a job and they were looking for the right person to fill the position, you would be a great team member. You would work well on projects. You would defer to other people in a cooperative, helpful way. You would assume the project could be done. You would stick to it until the project was finished. I mean, all the things that would make you fantastic for that criteria make you the perfect victim. Because think about it. What do antagonistic or highly conflictual people want? They want you to be long-suffering. They want you to assume the best about them. They want you to think that people are basically good. They want you to assume responsibility for things, even maybe things that are not your things that you should be responsible for, but to assume that responsibility. All these things then make you vulnerable to their tactics, which is perfect. So so isn't that interesting that that's what they're looking for? So 2/3 of us are highly agreeable and highly conscientious. Yeah, it's interesting that why do people not fire narcissistic people? That is an interesting question. And why is narcissism being an overly used person? Roberto, I think narcissism is being overused, but I think this is the issue. The issue is, are we becoming aware? Oh, and so is gaslighting. Wait, did you get my definition? Were you here to hear the definition of gaslighting? It's the diversion of a topic, the subject, and making the person for bringing the subject up the problem. And you think that's overused? Can you say more why you think that's overused? Are you gaslighting me, Roberto? I'm teasing you now. You're not. I'm just teasing you. Narcissism, I do think, is being overused. I think that we've gotten more sensitive about abusive behavior, emotional abuse, and we're calling it out. and we're calling all sorts of toxic behavior abuse is narcissistic behavior. I don't think all of it's narcissistic. Actually, narcissistic abuse is very specific. The definition has been proposed by Kristen Milstead. She wrote a beautiful explanation definition in Psych Central, where she posits there are 5 characteristics. I'm not going to be able to list them perfectly, but essentially it is an elaborate deception created by a person who appears to be well-meaning, gets the cooperation of the community who also thinks this person is well-meaning in order to continue the ruse. And then they convince the person that what they're really doing isn't what they're doing by deception. And that causes intense cognitive dissonance, and it also causes a trauma bond. It is basically a deception in order for the first person to do what they want to do, but they lie about it's a deception. Of course, they lie about the deception, but they don't own that the fact this is an exploitive and manipulative, and and then they get the society, the public, to cooperate because they make themselves look like a good guy or a wonderful woman. That's how they end up causing this deception. You ask another really great question, and that is 3% of the population in narcissism. No, that actually is outdated information. The most recent meta-analysis says that somewhere between 5 to 7% of the population is narcissistic. But here's what I want you to think about. Think about the fact if one narcissistic person has a minimal of 5 people in their life, that means that they are, sorry, somebody's texting me and they're an hour off. So they think something's happening and it's next in 1 hour, not right now. But so if you think about 7% of the population, let's just make it simple. Let's just use the round number of 5% because that's easier to think about. So if there's 300 million adults in the United States, and probably there's more because that's probably old stats too. All right, so 10% of 3 million or 300 million would be 30 million, right? 5% of 30 million is 15 million. All right, 15 million people. You think, all right, well, that's not a great number, but why are everybody talking about narcissistic abuse? But let's say that everybody who's diagnosed with this, and by the way, remember, diagnosed, people who are highly conflictual don't see clinicians. I was a clinician. They didn't come see me. Everybody who was dealing with them came to see me, not the person with the disorder. Everybody around the person with the disorder sought treatment because they're having a problem with the person. The person who has a disorder doesn't think they have a problem. But let's ignore the fact that probably that's a deflated number because they don't seek treatment. So everybody around them is a minimum of 5 people per 15 million people in the United States. Well, times that by 5, now you got up to 75 million people. And that's a low number. I'm just saying 5. The truth of the matter is any person's sphere probably is influencing more like 10 to 15 people. And if they're a sexual predator or they excessively act out with other people, then you're going to see that number because my ex is a narcissistic sociopath. He saw a minimum of 7 victims in the 1 month that he and I took a break. He had 17 victims that he hooked up with in that 1 month. He said that was true. He admitted that to me. I counted it. He agreed. 17 in 1 month. Imagine the number of people he's crossed paths with. We're talking hundreds of people. Yes, he was not diagnosed as a narcissistic sociopath. I am a psychologist, a licensed psychologist. Can I diagnose my own ex-husband? No, probably not. But he said he was a narcissist. Yes, he was a narcissist. He was also psychopathic. He was breaking the law, actively breaking the law and doing deception. So no, I agree, Roberto. Did you hear me? I just said that was not subjective. But he did see clinicians, absolutely. So did they act? And I'll tell you, as a clinician, I didn't diagnose people as narcissistic, and I can tell you why. So I'm part of the reason that there's an underreport of narcissists, because when they would come into my office, when you give someone a diagnosis, especially in the United States, that stays on their record for the rest of their life. It moves from it becomes part of their health, their medical record, which is transferable and kind of continues with them. Psychologists and psychiatrists know that. We are licensed to diagnose. We know that. We know this is in a way like a stigma that this person's being attached, this label is being attached. And we just feel kind of too humble. Like maybe, like, do we really want to saddle that person with that diagnosis? So we tend to, and plus insurance doesn't pay for it. It's not part, it's treatment is covered for things like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, things like that, dementia. It doesn't cover personality disorders. So why would we saddle somebody with a label that can't get treatment for it, that will follow them for the rest of their life? Do you see what I'm saying? So we don't, do I cover for them? Oh, now you're being antagonistic. I'm telling you the reasons. You sound a little conflictual, Roberto. Do you have an issue with narcissism? You're taking me on like you do. So be careful of that. This is we are a place where we should be able to just, be safe with each other and talk about it. So don't push back. I wasn't covering for narcissists. I was not like hassling them with it. That's the difference. So here you have underreported narcissists. And by the way, this was not a practice that I did. This was a practice that was taught to me. This was being told to me by my mentors, by graduate school. This was just, no, I don't have moderators anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore. So that's why it gets a little wild and hairy in here at times. Oh yeah, Lisa just took care of that for me. Yeah, so please understand that narcissism is being underreported. This is why it's being underreported. And then on top of it, when you think of the number of people who gets impacted, we're talking millions, over 100 million people alone in the United States. That's incredible. That's a huge number. Yeah, I saw that you meet him, Lisa. I see Ania's here too. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. You guys have my back for me. Appreciate that. So it is really incredible that they have this. So I'm going back because there's been a lot of conversation that I missed that I got so focused talking to Roberto. Well, this is I love your question, Mariella. Thank you for asking that. If it's a personality disorder and not a mental disorder, that's actually called a mental condition. That's the difference between a personality disorder and a mental condition. Yes, there's a massive difference, huge difference. And it makes all the difference. Understanding that really, really makes a big difference. So let's explain that. And that's why they don't change. I think when you start to hear me explain the differences between a mental health condition and a personality disorder, then you're going to understand better why change is not very possible. So mental health condition is things that are, imagine you get a flu or a virus, a cold, and you don't feel good. That's a condition. You're being impacted by something that's happening to you. And as a result of that, you don't feel good. You're not yourself. And so people who have a depression come in and say, I'm not sleeping good. Boy, I have a hard time having any hope for and any motivation. I just don't want to do anything. I'm having a hard time with that. Sometimes they overeat. I can't stop eating, they'll say. Or other times they'll say, I just have no appetite at all. I can't eat. Everything's bland and tastes like ash. They'll often say they feel like they're in a pit, like it's a black hole. And even the world, the way the world looks, how dark or light the world is, the world's got dark. That's depression. It's a condition, and you feel miserable when it's happening to you. You want it to stop, so you come in for help because you want somebody to help you make it stop. The problem with narcissistic personality disorder, and this is also problems with all personality disorders, is that it's a disorder. It's a personality disorder. It's not a condition. So what does that mean? What am I saying? So originally, when we used to do way back, it's now changed. The diagnosis now has changed. The DSM-5 did away with the 5 axes. Used to be we diagnose you with a condition, with an axis like a pervasive condition. So the one was temporary. The second was pervasive, meaning long-standing. The third was we would identify if you have any health issues contributing. Then we'd look at your stressors, and then we'd say, how well are you functioning? That's how we would assess you. So on axis 2, which is where the pervasive conditions go, I should say pervasive disorders go, we would put things like, are they autistic? Do they have a mental impairment, like they have an intellectual impairment? Are they showing signs of dementia, something organic going on? Are they struggling with ADHD? Do they have a personality disorder? Because these are things that are persistent. They're permanent. They're They're the way you are. An autistic person, and I am autistic, isn't decide to be autistic and not decide to be autistic. I don't know what it's like to see the world the way that you do. I see it only the way that I see it, and I've always seen it that way. I persistently see it that way. My brain works differently than yours, and so I interpret things differently. I miss things that you might see. I might hyper focus on things that you're not on. I also may be struggling with empathy in a way that you're not. I see literally the world differently, and as a result, and I can't tell you what it's not like to be that way because I've always been this way. Personality disorders are the same. They're an axis to diagnosis. They're pervasive, meaning that pervasive means it's intrinsic. That's really what we're saying. It's intrinsic in this situation, that this is who they are. It's part of their hardwiring. It means their brain is different. It means it functions differently. It means they interpret things differently. They are different. The same for dependent personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. These are pervasive conditions that are permanent. That's the difference between a condition and a disorder. It's a disorder. So there's 9 criteria, and you have to have a minimal of 5 and in order for you to be diagnosed. But a great question. And that's why, this is another reason why they say they're not the problem, because they don't feel like anything's wrong with them. They feel like they're just being themselves. This is the way they've always been. They just notice that everyone around them has an issue with them, and that's the problem. You're the problem. If you would just stop bringing the issue up, then there would be no problem. That's why a lot of people end up thinking when they're in a toxic relationship that they are the problem, because if you're, again, go back to agreeable and conscientious, then you are overworked to help make things go well, and you own problems. You take responsibility for problems fast. So as a result, then when they say you're the problem, you think, well, maybe I am. Maybe I need to read more books on marriage. Maybe I need to go to more conferences. Maybe we need to see more therapists. You do all this work in order to make things better. I'm coming out with it will be out next week. I'm super excited about it. So I can't offer it to you today, but I'm coming out with a new quiz called Am I the Narcissist? That's the quiz. And it's for two pieces, 2 parts. It's for those of you who've been accused of being narcissistic and you really worry that maybe you are, but you kind of know that you're not. You kind of know that this person's making the issue you because they don't want to be the issue. So that it'll help you to know. It'll also help you to know that you're not the narcissist if this is happening to you. And it's also for those of you who wonder if maybe you really are narcissist. You have this pattern of picking people who then say that you are and find you hard to live with, and you have like all these failed relationships and you're struggling at work. Then maybe you'd like to know that you are narcissistic. It can actually tell if you're mild, moderate, or severe. So that will be coming out next week, is this quiz, Am I the Narcissist? And I'm super excited about that. That's going to be available on my website. The second thing is I have, for those of you who are struggling with narcissistic abuse, and Lisa reminded me, Lisa Sunny is here in my live on TikTok, and I love that, and that she and I co-wrote a book called Surviving to Thriving, a 6-step blueprint guide to narcissistic abuse healing and recovery. So if you're struggling to know how to move from, being like a victim, you feel like you're a victim and you want to become a survivor, here are the 6 common obstacles that her and I both had to overcome, that we see as a pattern that is a common for all survivors to struggle with, is like letting go of the person you thought you met and that they're so wonderful and you really fell in love with that potential. Man, how many times did I say I loved his potential? I did love his potential. It was incredible. We talk about that. How do you let go of the potential? Then how do you let go of the guilt? I mean, so many of, now I didn't feel guilt. Did a lot of you guys feel guilt? I didn't feel guilty, but a lot of us felt guilty. But what I struggled with is feeling, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance. I really felt like, what's real? I thought he was really a good person who was working, and he said he was doing treatment. We were in treatment the whole time of our marriage. For 2 years, we were in treatment. He kept saying he'd never worked this hard. Was he working that hard? Oh, actually, he wasn't working that hard. He was lying. He was doing a lot of lying. Yes. So I struggle with cognitive dissonance. So there's a chapter on cognitive dissonance. So it talks about the 6 obstacles. So you can find a link in my bio if that's something you're interested in. For YouTube, I will have to put the link in because it's not in the show notes down there. So I'll have to do that. But it's an awesome workbook. That's what it is. It's a workbook. I also, for those of you really struggling with cognitive dissonance, and lately I've been talking to a lot of you, a lot of you have been reaching out. I have 2 things that I think could strongly help you. One is I have an online course and workbook called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. It's specifically about how to break the cognitive dissonance. Because the gaslighting creates such confusion that you don't know what's real. Like I just told you, we were in 2 years of treatment. He attended. Now, I did find at least once that he said he went to a therapy session and he parked his phone in one spot and did something else. But how many other times did he do that? I don't know. But it looked like to me he was going to therapy. He said he'd never worked harder. So I thought it was true. But it left me with so much confusion. So First Step to Leaving a Narcissist is incredibly helpful with you facing the reality of your situation. But if you'd like, there's even a better way to get help. And that is to join my Toxic Free Relationship Club. It's less than 1 coaching call a month. You get a whole lot of benefits. In fact, at least one of my members here are in this live, where we do weekly office hours as a group. We also have weekly trainings. We 24/7 community support. You have access to First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist for free, given to you. You're going to be invited free to a webinar with Lee Hammock, Self-Aware Narcissist, in August. All these benefits come with joining my club, Toxic Free Relationship Club. Again, if you're interested, the link is in my bio. So someone asked a really great question I want to circle back to. Cognitive dissonance, what is it? First of all, we're actually using a little bit of a misname. It's really persistent, chronic and persistent cognitive dissonance is what it is. Sandra Brown, again, really honed in on this powerfully. And I was just listening to her. She has a YouTube channel where she talks a lot about training therapists. It's specifically actually for therapists. But thank you, Nia. I saw Nia like pushing my club. Thank you so much, Nia. I appreciate that. So what cognitive dissonance is a creation of a dual reality. And it happens in narcissistically abusive relationships. So you meet this person you think you know is X. You think you meet somebody who's into the things that you're into, who has kids or around the ages that you did. Maybe you had similar school history. You think that their hobbies are the same as you. You feel like you really met an incredible match. And they seem interested in the things that you're interested in. They seem to be really interested in you. They just show up in this big way. And you think you know this guy. We're going to call him Dr. Jekyll. You think you know Dr. Jekyll. You think he is your soulmate. I'll tell you, I didn't believe in the idea of soulmate until I met my ex. And then suddenly, I actually said I met my soulmate. And I actually went to my therapist. I have this on record. I think that because I was taping my sessions at the time, I saw her. I said, I didn't meet a more safe person, a safer person than this guy. For those who read my book, Love You More, I couldn't have been at greater risk. This guy was trying to harm me. He's actively trying to destroy me. I couldn't have met a more dangerous person. So that's Dr. Jekyll. That's the persona. They create this, though. That's not who they really are. Who they really are, they've hidden from you. You get glimpses of it the more you're in a relationship, but that's not actually, you don't see them constantly until late game, mid game of the relationship. But you really think the person you met is the person, that's who they are, but it's really actually not. They're a chameleon. Think of that. So imagine that you see, and I'm in Texas. We see them all the time. You see them sitting on a cement block, they turn white, and you think, oh, they're white. No, they're not. That's not actually their color, but they look like they are white, because they're in that environment. Well, that's what they do with you and I. When they're around you and I, they mimic us. They look like us. The problem is that's not who they actually are. They've actually hidden who they are. They've hidden it for lots of complicated reasons. One is they're terrified that if you knew who they really were, you would reject them. So they feel like a fraud inside, like shame-based fraud. It's really unconscious, really driven by a lot of unconscious processes. They're also extremely immature, and they don't have a lot of ego structures to hold themselves up. But a lot of them, unfortunately, also is hiding things that are not good because of this immature structure, this impulsive, bored, mercurial mood, inability to control how they feel, all of this, that actually is also causing them to do bad things. That means that they're probably using substances they shouldn't be using. Maybe they are spending money in a way that's bad or not helpful, certainly not good for the relationship. They're maybe seeing other people on the side on top of it. There's just things that they're doing that they're just not telling you about because that's how they're managing their lack of internal structure. And I'm not excusing it. It's wrong. They could get therapy. They could learn to grow up, mature, become a better person. But instead, they use all these immature ways of handling it. But they're keeping that hidden from you because they know if you knew, you wouldn't be in a relationship with them. You would have gotten out a long time ago. Because for one, it's putting you at risk. Somebody mentioned about they heard my partner in the 1 month that we were split in the middle of our marriage, that he saw 17 other sexual partners, 17. And having, was it protected sex? I don't know. But you're right. They're putting us at extreme risk when they do these things. I know a lot of you have told me that your partners have gotten in trouble with their junk company or in trouble with the law or maybe in trouble with a substance of some kind. So maybe they're fighting a lot. They're doing all sorts of things that are causing all these problems. And so as a result, they're hiding it because they know that if you know, then they'd get out. So we're going to call that personality Mr. Hyde. So you got Dr. Jekyll and you got Mr. Hyde. Well, you at some internal level, we're talking about cognitive dissonance for those who are joining us. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a psychologist. I also have a toxic-free relationship club where we talk about all sorts of things like this. And first steps to leaving a narcissist. If you're struggling with cognitive dissonance, I have a practical course to help you with it. So you think you know this person, but intuitively you sense something's wrong. You sense there's this dual reality. There's gaslighting going on too, and that's also creating the cognitive dissonance. So you realize there is a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde, and inside of you, you learn how to deal with the Dr. Jekyll and you learn how to deal with Mr. Hyde. So you create a dual personality inside of you as you have these dual realities that compete, and you feel it. This is how you feel it. Is this relationship really good? Is this person a good person? Is this a good woman or a bad woman? Is this a good man or a bad woman or bad man? Are they really working on the relationship or are they not working on the relationship? And you begin to try to find evidence. You start to try to prove one side or the other. But the problem is both's true. They're both true. So the minute you find evidence in one direction, you'll find evidence in the opposite direction. That happened to me so many times. Come home and he had therapy and it was the most effective therapy ever. Then I find out he's texting somebody. Both was true. He was both a good guy and a bad guy. They're both a wonderful woman and they're a bad woman. They're both. And you feel that. But because you can't figure out what's real because both's real, you sit in this place of paralysis. It literally shuts your brain down. Sandra Brown calls it is your brain is on fire. You're being traumatized by the bad things being done, by all the shocking things you're discovering, by all the deception, and your brain can't compute because both realities are true. The minute you confirm one reality, the other reality pops up. The other reality pops up, then the first reality shows up again. Back, forth, and you cannot make a decision. That's where the first steps to leaving a narcissist as an online course helps tremendously with you breaking through it's what I needed, honestly. I sat there over a year. It was the most agonizing experience of my life. I'd had a private practice. I was buying and selling lots of houses. I was a landlord. I was doing all these incredible, decisive things as a businesswoman, and I couldn't make a decision about this person who was doing harmful things to me. Sat there for a year. I lost relationships over it. I'm sure you guys are too. Oh, it's awful. That's what we're talking about in Toxic Free Relationship Club. We're helping you if you're in that place and you want to move out of it. You're scared to take the step. You know that you need to leave. You're not for sure how to leave. You need more support to do it. Or you've just left and you're not for sure if you can make it because you're so freaking scared on your own and you don't know who you are. That's who is part of my membership club on Toxic Free Relationship Club. In fact, we're going to meet right after this for our office hours. We meet every week for an hour as a group. And then we also have all sorts of training and webinars and all sorts of support. So if you're looking for psychological input and help and support and group support, community support with people who get it, please consider joining. It's expensive. I'm not going to tell you it's not, but I also offer financial assistance to those of you who qualify. So I don't want the cost to stand in stand in the way, but I also really want you to consider it, because I think it's less than the cost of a coaching call a month. You know, how much money are you spending on that? And that's a good thing to spend on, but consider all this access you're going to get on top of that. Yeah, Sly, I know you love your ex, but you're right. So it does target, the narcissism does target us and makes it really, really, really hard. It very much so. Yeah, and Mardet, I don't know, Mardet, you're right. It's the brain on fire. That is, and the other reason why you're feeling so much confusion. Here's the other piece I forgot to tell you guys, and that is, it's not just your dual reality that's causing the problem. Your brain is being impacted. Your brain's being, your amygdala is swelling. That is where the fight or flight is. So you're getting more and more vigilant, more edgy, struggling to sleep, struggling to relax. And then your hippocampus is shrinking, which is making you forgetful. It's causing you to feel disorganized. I struggle to say things. You know, you listening to me, I've been like, looking across 3 platforms, following all the comments coming in. I'm managing it really well. You wouldn't know that when you met me in the middle of that relationship. I could sometimes barely string a sentence together. My co-host on Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse, Tara Blair Ball. If you're not following her, she's fantastic. You can find her as Tara.relationship coach. She said that when she was in that narcissistic relationship, she was cold. She said it was like her body didn't have the energy to warm up her extremities. So she walked around dressed to the nines because she was cold all the time. That was how it was affecting her. For me, I was mute. I couldn't speak a lot. I struggled saying words. Again, if you think about it, I'm autistic. Autistic people often have communication problems. So it activated that for me. I really struggled with communicating and saying my words. Even now, if you really listen to me carefully, you realize I have an odd stutter where I will say the same word a couple times in a row. I know, because I edit my own podcast, so I have to cut all those out. But all of that got so much worse for me. So Tara's information is Tara.relationshipcoach. So it's at Tara.relationshipcoach. She can be found. I don't think she's on YouTube, but you can find her on Instagram and find her on TikTok. She's got huge accounts on both platforms. She does a lot of work around healthy relationships, healthy communication styles. She also she talks a lot about codependency. Her and I disagree a little bit on that. But if you ever listen to the podcast, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse, you're hearing both of us. We're on every Monday is when we drop, and we decided we're not going to take a break. So we've interviewed Lisa Sunny for the summer, and we've also interviewed Dr. Les Carter. He has a huge channel called Surviving Narcissism on YouTube with almost 750,000 followers. And it was a fantastic interview. I mean, Lisa and us talked about trauma bonds, how to know that you're in one, how do you break one. And then Dr. Carter and us talked about narcissistic people and just how are they the way that they are and how do we get into a relationship with them. It was a wonderful, wonderful interviews with both of them. I just was setting up the dates and when those were going to be released this summer. Lisa is going to be, both of them are going to be in July. Both interviews will be in July. Yeah. So Cine Girl too, you love hearing our varying codependency views. Yeah. Tara is a recovering codependent. Is how she diagnosed herself. Now, I'm not saying she diagnosed herself, but that's how she approaches life, is that she also, I think, maybe is a love addict. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to put words into her mouth, but I am definitely, I am of those 2/3 who are agreeable and conscientious. I definitely fit that category, but I also unfortunately fit the category of childhood trauma and a troubled home. I grew up in a troubled home and had suffered childhood trauma. So I'm fit into the first third. So I was kind of primed to be in these relationships. I notice a lot of you have asked to join. The name of the podcast is Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. I know a lot of you have been asking to join today's live. I don't accept just spontaneous invitations. As I said, I'm autistic. It shakes me. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you want to talk about, and I don't like that loss of control. So if you'd like to join me on a live, I would love that. Just please talk to me beforehand, because I always go live. Again, I'm autistic, which means I'm very predictable. I always go live on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. always. So if you're interested in joining me and you want to make a pitch, talk to me about that, and I'd be happy to consider it. Yeah, I'm kind of missing the conversation over here on YouTube. Sorry about that, guys. I want to see it. So yeah, you guys have been talking to each other. I love that. I love that you do that. Yeah, Dr. Carter, I'm embarrassed to admit he's new to me. I found him when he approached me for an interview. So he interviewed me, I think it was like in April. It was a great interview. I appreciate that. Appreciated the offer. I mean, I feel like a peon next to the guy. But and then he was so gracious to come back and let Tara and I interview him for our podcast. So it's going to be really, really great. And we make sure we talked about different things. So what he talked to me about is not the same thing that we talked about him. But yeah, it was very, very powerful. Yeah, I have a new wig. For those of you who saw, I wear wigs. I had a massive hair loss after my third baby. I was super sick with that pregnancy. My resting heart rate, this was documented. My resting heart rate was 120. I was on heart medication. One doctor told me that I was actually in a form of congestive heart failure with that pregnancy. And then when I had the baby and went through that normal kind of hormonal change that women go through, I had a massive shed. It was a permanent loss. I just saw a dermatologist who talked to me about it. He looked at my hair loss, and said it was definitely related to a medical condition. It's not a normal hair loss, and it's not a genetic hair loss, that I had actually suffered something medically that caused a loss, permanent shed. And where I buy these is, and I should be an affiliate for them. I need to talk to them because I always buy from this one place, but it's Shirley's Wig Shop out of Northland, Michigan. And if you put in the gorgeous U is the coupon code, you can get massive amount off, like sometimes like 30% off. So super great prices. I love her stuff. This is a Gabor. This is a new line of Gabor that just came out. It's actually lace front, for those of you who know. It has a natural part, so it looks like real hair. So and it feels great, and it's naturally curly. I don't have to curl it; it will stay this way. So it makes it super easy to take care of. Yeah, I was super sick with that pregnancy, just super sick. I was induced because they knew that I couldn't go any further. And they were really concerned for the baby. I mean, it was just, and then I had a very traumatic delivery, like everything that could go wrong, and I'm serious, went wrong. I had a placenta abruption. So the placenta was, for those, sorry, I hope you trigger you. And I also had a uterine rupture. My uterus was rupturing. So I lost my hair. That was the cost of it. I lost my hair in my 30s, which was devastating. Yeah, my family's redhead. I'm Irish, really very Scottish Irish, and so redheads run in our family. So this is close to some of my family members actually have this hair color. It is their hair color. I'm thankful that I'm okay too. I do get asked about my hair because I'm shifting it all the time. And it also is a point. This is a really good point to bring back up about narcissistic abuse. Narcissists love to find our broken point and then make it a point of vulnerability in the relationship. Very, very, very vulnerable. So watch out for that. So it may be for you something completely different. My hair loss he found out about it early on, and he made it a do or die situation, that if I wasn't going to be vulnerable and show him my bald scalp, then he wasn't going to be in a relationship with us. So, and I wanted a relationship, so I let him see me in a way that I wasn't ready to. It took me years to process the hair loss and process the shift in my identity that it created in me. And I had nightmares. It was so traumatic that I had PTSD symptoms around my hair loss. I had regular nightmares about my hair loss. It shifted the way I handled social outings. I stopped going out a whole lot. I got really careful about my identity. It shut me down at so many levels. And I can't even begin to describe what it was like. I know we're not supposed to talk about it. I wanted to harm myself. I thought about why live. It was catastrophic. He knew that, and he used it against me, and he made it a point of wounding me around it. And in fact, watch out for this, they'll do this. I asked him, the one thing I never wanted him to do is take a photo of me, especially when I was sleeping with my wig off, and he did. I found it. He never told me he did, but I found the photo that he had done that. So yeah, it was so this is what I did, because we need to take our power back. This is how I took my power back. So identify the way that your narcissist or narcissists have made you vulnerable, and I want you to figure out how you're going to take your power back. What I did was I thought, hell no. You're going to make me feel ashamed for being bald, and you're going to make that a point of where you have one over on me. Then I'm going to tell everybody in the world I wear wigs and that I'm a bald woman. I haven't got to the point where I'm okay with just taking them off and showing you that. But I refuse now to be ashamed of this, because he is not going to have this over on me. This is going to be a point of where I'm going to celebrate this with the world. That is my way of making this a good thing, not a bad thing. And since I've come out about it, I've gotten tremendous support. You all, a lot of 40% of women have thinning hair. It's not like it doesn't happen. It's just that we don't often talk about it. And so that's the way I took my power back. Somebody's saying somebody wanted, their partner wanted unwanted pics, like vulnerable pictures. Yeah, see, they'll do things like that. They'll put you in some compromised position, and it's different for every single one of us. It may be how you feel as a mom, or maybe it's how you feel about, your body, or about intimacy or something. And they'll do this, and they'll work it over and make you feel bad for it. They'll make it some hidden secret you two have, and a place of incredible shame. They'll make it a place of shame, and that's so they can have a thumb down. Yeah. So Jen says, mine took money to my money from the sale of our home. Sheesh. Yeah. See, they'll find something. They'll find something that really, really makes you feel extremely vulnerable, very vulnerable. So watch out for that, because the best way for us to win against all of this, and this is what I wanted to wrap up. I want to wrap up about how do you combat gaslighting, because this is where we started out with today, and I want to deliver on what I promised. But it also fits with this too, these points of shame. We need to stand firm in ourselves. I want you to figure out who you are, define yourselves. And I know some of you have shared really personal things with me. Some of you have written to me and talked to me about some of your issues. I know some of your stories. I want you to root yourself in your value. Define what it is. Maybe it's only one or two things you can think of right now that you feel solid about. Maybe you know that you're competent in X, or that you're really good doing Y, or maybe you love the way you have your noses, or whatever. I want you to find those things, and I want you to root yourself in that. And I don't want you to be able to move off of that. When you start to feel shaky around who you are, and if you're a good person, or if you have value and worth, I want you to root yourself in the truth, very much in the truth. It's so important, very, very important. Oh, Jackie, oh my goodness. Jackie said her husband put hidden cameras to show both her baldness and her weight gain. Oh, see, now, Jackie, we're going to move actively against that. There are things about you that are unique and wonderful these things don't get to define you. That number on the scale does not get to define you. The number of hair in your head does not get to define you. Yeah, I love that. Giant Slayer says, be good to yourself. Exactly. So I want you to show yourself self-love. And I also want you to find the things that you know that you do. Maybe you're the best. You know how to give the best hugs in the world. And that everybody who's around you describes you as peaceful and encouraging. Hold on to that. Really hold on to that. When it comes to gaslighting, the way to combat the gaslighting is to stand firm in the truth. So when you catch whatever it is that you know is wrong, let's go back to my example of the garbage. They didn't take the garbage out. Now they're making the issue that you're bringing it up. I want you to say, we're talking about the garbage. Back to the subject of the garbage. That's interesting. Let's save that for another time, but let's talk about next week in the garbage. You just hold on to the point. What you're going to do is you tell them, one, is that you have a steel backbone. Two, they can't make you get confused and thrown off. You just remember, whenever you enter into a discussion and the topic becomes you, remember the original point of the discussion. What was it that was brought up? Bring that back up and then ignore the rest. I know it's not easy because we want to defend ourselves. We hate having people misunderstand us or malign us or attack us. We hate that. and we'll go on to our off on the defense. But don't do that. Stay on the topic that you brought up, whether it was the garbage or who's picking the kids up or what you're going to do for dinner, whatever it is. Stick on the point. Become literally a broken record. And what you'll find is that they get bored, they get thrown off. You want to see a narcissist confused do this, it really throws them. And I'll tell you, when I started using the strategy, I really broke through a lot of the crap he was throwing at me, a lot of the lies he was throwing at me. He couldn't, there was nothing he could say, because I would say, back to this or back to what I found. And he would just like look at me. And then finally he'd give up. He'd either stop talking about it or they would give up, because you've thrown, like, think of fighting. If you guys are in a ring, and I know most of us none of us have ever been inside of a ring, but if you're in a ring and you're throwing a punch, but if you throw your weight off in a different way, you disrupt the pattern. So you're disrupting the pattern with them when you stick on the point. They're wanting you to be thrown off by their pattern. Their pattern is circular argument, this type of denial and misleading and misdirection. But when you hold on to that solid point, you're taking control and you're breaking the pattern, and it really is effective. So, but I want to add this caveat. I don't live with the person you're living with, and I don't know the danger spots that they may have, but you know them. So if it feels like it's not safe, then don't do it. But if you feel that it's safe enough, then I want you to try that. Hey, we have gone an hour, and this has been super exciting. I'm going to now join my Toxic Free Relationship Club. For those of you who are really looking for additional support, please consider becoming a member. It is there's access to it on my show notes, and there's also a link in my bio, and I would love to have you there. Please don't let finances be an issue. If you know that you'd benefit from it and it's outside your scope of finances, get a hold of me personally. Let's talk about it. But I really would love to see you there. And this has been awesome. I'm always here Tuesdays at 4 my time. It's almost 5 o'clock here. So if you guys, I'd love to see you back, and we can talk more about healthy, unhealthy, and toxic relationships. It's awesome. All right, you guys, take care. I'll see you next week.